Hey YouTube, it's your beekeeper here. I'm doing a repair on my own dryer, and I'm just going to show this video in case it helps somebody that's having intermittent heat problems with the dryer. Just kind of gives them an idea, maybe something else to think about outside of the box. I am not an appliance repair person, so I'm not going to have all the absolute values for testing things. I'm not going to have all the absolute nomenclature for what pieces and parts are called. But let me give you an idea of what's going on. I'll try to keep this video short, and let me show you how I'm going to make it happen. This is a KitchenAid gas-fired, heavy-duty, super capacity plus residential dryer. Bang. It's about 15 years, I think, would be an exaggeration. It's between 12 and 15 years old. The last several months, this thing has had an intermittent heat cycle. And if you've done any troubleshooting at all in your line of profession, you know intermittent problems are some of the most difficult ones to pinpoint because it's hard to replicate the failure. You know, complete failures are easy. It doesn't get hot. Cool. We'll go around with a multimeter. We'll go around with a flashlight and look around. We'll find the failure and we'll make it happen. Now, intermittent issues, what would happen? You throw a heavy load of laundry in here, and sometimes it would dry perfect, sometimes not so much. You need to let it run. You'd either put it on the sensor dry, where it's supposed to, it has two tabs on inside the drum there that sense how dry or how wet your laundry is, or you put it on time dry. I usually do time dry for about 45-50 minutes. Cotton towels are high. Bing, right? So the thing wasn't getting dry sometimes, not all the time. So I said, well, maybe the exhaust is clogged, because oftentimes, or at least obstructed, because even though you keep your lint filter clean, oftentimes the finer lints get past that. They can cause flow issues on the backside. That's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother service, but that's what I did. I slid this forward. I take the back off. You take the fan housing on the back out and you clean it, and there's usually dust in there. There's usually earrings in there. If you have daughters like I do, jewelry in there, whatever. But there's things in there. Okay, so I did that. I cleaned that out, put it all back together. Yay! You take a look and the thing fires up, no problem. On gas dryers, you have a little window here. This window gives you the opportunity to look at the burner. Dad, there's something wrong with the heat. There's something wrong with the dryer. So I come here. You know, everything's wet. So I come here and I press go. I look in there, the fire fires up, no problem. So I said, okay, it must be an exhaust thing. There are master fuses in the back here. I believe that's what they're called, a thermal fuse. That's the word I'm looking for. Thermal fuses will blow if you overload and overheat your machine. That's not it, because usually the machine completely dies when that thermal fuse. They're about 10 bucks. They're very common if you have a complete dead system. Check the thermal fuse. That's on the back, on the heater box on the back there, the heat exchanger. But anyway, so the clothes are wet. Fire this thing up. I put it on high. I look in there. Flame lights. I'm like, the thing works. So I try it on medium. I try it on low. It fires off extra low. So I said, well, okay, it's not likely in this control panel here. So a couple weeks ago, I get just tired. A couple weeks ago, for whatever reason, 2/3 of the way through the laundry thing, I stick my hand in there and the thing's ice cold. It's on towels high, it's on ice cold. I'm like, cool, we have failure. So I shut the thing down, I turn it back on again, and I look in there, and it goes through its heat cycle. But instead of releasing the valve, the igniter comes on, turns red, and it shuts down. So I say, oh, it's the flame sensor. The flame sensor's bad. That's usually the first thing you're going to think about. So I go and I buy a new one, and locally here I sourced one at an appliance parts house. It was about 14 bucks. Easy change. One screw, Molex plug, bang. And I'll show you how to take the dryer apart here in a second. But the problem continued. So I said, ah, fudge. I mean, I could have come through with an ohm meter and tested the flame sensor, and that's really what I should have done. But in my head, and I'm far from an appliance person, that's why I'm sharing my initial failures with everybody here. My initial thought was it's a flame sensor. That's kind of the consumable part in there, if you want to say. if you want to call it that, but that wasn't the problem. So I had already thrown the old one away, so I should have hit it with an ohm meter. I should have let it go through its heat cycle. The problem with it doing that, or I should have applied heat to it with a heat gun. The problem with that is you can't test this machine when you have it all apart, really, because you got to pull the drum out and such, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But a couple days ago, 4 days ago, we were having intermittent heat problems again. So ice cold in the box, and we're 10 minutes into our cycle. So I got my ohm meter out, I got my fluke meter out here, and I started testing things while it was in failure mode. And while it was in failure mode, I determined that the dryer coils were bad. And I'll show you what this is in just a minute. These dryer coils are what release they open the plungers, which releases the gas in the gas valve. One of them is a primary, and then which is like a safety shutoff. That opens up first, and then the second coil opens the second plunger that allows the gas to actually go out the burner and create heat. Now I found these on the interweb. Here's the kit here for the KitchenAid. These cover a lot of dryers, and I'll show you how these go in just a minute. It's a really easy replacement. These were under 10 bucks. I think they were about $5.99 shipped, if I'm not mistaken, on eBay. You can look that part number up. Yeah, and what it turned out to be, and this is what I'm thinking in my head, was when this system got hot, one of these, the primary coil is weak. That's what it boiled down to when I was testing it. The one that, because I would hear the solenoid clicking. I would hear that click, and then the system was shut down. So I knew, or at least in my head, I thought, well, the gas valve is working. I think we're in good shape, so it must be the flame sensor. Well, it turns out I was only hearing one click and not two. So I should hear the release of the first valve, which charges the system, basically charges the burning system. And then when the flame sensor senses that the igniter has fired off, it will release the second plunger, or it'll pull the second plunger, which will release gas to the burner itself and create flame. Just like in a car, just like in electronics, when a weak electronic coil gets hot, it loses its strength and ability to hold that plunger open. So when I was checking it before, the system was failed. The system had failed. I was checking it. The system had already cooled down. So when I would run a cycle, my kids would tell me, "Hey, my clothes aren't dry," or I would open up the thing and my clothes aren't dry. I'd hit go. I'd look, and the fire would fire because it had cooled down. Well, this time I was able to catch it in failure, and in failure was when the system was hot. That's it. So I should have checked the flame sensor with an ohm meter. This would have solved the problem weeks ago, but I didn't. So I checked these with an ohm meter while the system was failed, and they didn't read out properly. So let me show you how to open this thing up. Let me show you how to change a dryer coil kit for a KitchenAid dryer. So just hang tight for just a minute. So the first thing you're going to want to do to take this dryer apart is grab a Phillips screwdriver. I'll pick you up off the soap container here. Just inside the lint door, you'll see two Phillips head screws, stainless steel Phillips head screws. You're going to want to remove those. Those screws are very standard for dryers, residential dryers across the board. You won't get this open unless you get those two screws out of the way. You'll damage actually the lint trap tray there. So there are spring clips here and here. Certain machines you've got to put a putty knife in here to squeeze it back. I just pull on these things really hard and they'll pop up. I'll show you what I mean, and then I'll show you what the clips look like. So here's what the spring clips look like. If you were to come in here with a flat blade, if you were to come in here with a scraper blade like this, for example, and stick it between the lid and the face and push it in, it's hard to do now that it's open, but you push it in and that would allow this clip to release from this right here. I don't. If you just give it a good yank, oftentimes they'll come up. So the first thing you need to do is you need to disconnect the door switch. There's a simple Molex plug. Of course, now that I say simple, I need a thing. Hold on. Here's a good thing. See if I can do this without stabbing my finger here. Let me get out of the way. Boy, the lighting in here is something else, isn't it? So you got to push in there's a lock here that holds it together. You push it in with a pointy object, a little stabby bit there, and it comes right apart. So with that disconnected, you come in with, I'm using a nut driver, or you can use a small socket, whatever your tool cache has. There are two 5/16 sheet metal screws. There's one here, and there's one here, and that's what holds the front of the door on. Now to get the face off at this point, you have two spring steel clips that hook into this face. So all you have to do is lift this whole face directly up, and it will might give you a little bit of grief at first, but it'll come apart. Now, when you do this too, you also have to support the dryer drum, because the dryer drum is supported by a felt bearing. They call it a bearing, but and a plastic Teflon type ring as well. So you got to hold, see that comes out, you got to lift, and that comes right off. Now at this point we don't need to remove the dryer drum. However, put a thing here, just put a gallon of paint here to hold it in the way. Alright, here's what the burner assembly looks like. Part number 8318272. This is not in bad shape. I went through with an ohm meter, I was testing these. These are the coils that I'm talking about that had failed, that are failed. This back one here is your primary release coil. This one's bad. It was not releasing the plunger. Pressure reducer, the gas comes in, the gas feed comes in from the house. And this bent tube here, this is a pressure reducing device, or pressure regulating device probably. There's a plunger in here that this coil releases, primary, and then the secondary coil releases the gas valve that actually opens the burner. The igniter is, hold on, let me get you a pointy bit, because then I'm not blocking the light as badly. This device here that I'm pointing at is the igniter. That's an extremely delicate, very inexpensive, but an extremely delicate piece of material that glows red, red hot, and that actually will allow the gas, when the gas hits it, it will ignite. Those are easy to replace. 2-wire Molex, there's a screw right here, also a 5/16, and that comes right out. Those are $15, $20 around here. The flame sensor that I replaced is a black box that sits at the end of this blue and white wiring harness. That is, as I mentioned, as I mentioned before, that's a heat diaphragm. I believe it's normally closed. Don't quote me on that. I believe it's a normally closed circuit, and when it senses heat, the circuit opens, or it's the other way around. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to Google it, and I don't have the Google here with me. So I replaced that. That's easy. It's a quarter inch screw here on top. It comes with the whole bracket. That was $15 if I'm not mistaken. It really wasn't expensive. But that's not what we're here for. We're here because this one is on no bueno. So we're going to pull the plugs off. This is a simple Phillips head screw. So at this point, with these plugs out of the way, I should probably mention, even though I haven't mentioned it, I suppose if you're a safety enthusiast, you should probably have unplugged machine at this point. In reality, with the door switch unplugged, the system is dead. You can't function anything on this. None of this stuff will work if the door is open. So in theory there shouldn't be any power here, but again, if safety is your #1 concern, you should unplug it from the wall. For me, safety's third. I ain't tripping. So, alright, so with our little short Phillips bit here, I just want to remove the 2 Phillips head screws. Yeah, let's see if I could just rotate that out of the way. I probably could, actually. I'm so stubborn. Look at that. Getting that out of the way. Oops, there we go. These coils just pull right up, or you can drop them, whatever you want to do. The thing is that this is the one that failed. If I put an ohm meter on this right now, it would read normal. But I'm not going to, because it's cool. It's nice and cold. So, I'll come back over here. there's a little dimple on the top that corresponds to the hole in the bracket. So the 3 tabbed coil goes for the primary, and the 2 goes for the secondary. I didn't see the clock position on these little dots, but they'll fall into place here in just a minute. And there's one. Oh, there they go. So that's that. So we'll come back in, put the screws in. So we'll plug her back in. Here are those hooks that I talked about. You see so you want to come in high with the face piece, slide it down so it locks into there. You're going to clip the 2 bottoms in first, and then you put the face on. So let's go ahead and do that, and yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That away. So we're going to put this on high because I want immediate flame. We're going to put it on time dry. You can already hear the timer running. Go ahead and hit go. And we'll watch the heat cycle. Hopefully it works and we don't catch fire. We're going to see red here in the next, there it goes. And then we should hear it click and flame. Come on, baby. There we go. Cool. You can hear all my little prickly balls rolling around in there. Let's try that again. Push go. There we go for the second round. Yeah, we got flame. Cool. Alright, so the real test is going to be, unfortunately now I need to do laundry, but I'm going to do my work pants, which are heavy, and some towels or something, and yeah, I'll bring you back here. It'll only be a few seconds for you, but it'll be about 45 minutes to an hour for me. I'm going to do a load. It'll be more than an hour. I'll stick it in there and see if it dries. I'll be right back. Alright, so here we are. I ran this for about 45 minutes on high. It should go a cool down mode, but I'm going to go and shut it off. Let's see. Ooh, nice and warm. Oh, nice. Got heavy pants. We got a blanket in here. A couple pairs of work pants. So that's it. Things to consider are the thermal fuse. The thermal fuse is either pass or fail. If that blows, nothing works. That's not intermittent. I should have used common sense because the flame sensor is a mechanical diaphragm that gets hot and it switches. It's an on-off switch, basically. I should have used common sense in the beginning and realized that the flame sensor is a pass-fail as well, not intermittent. So the electronic coils, definitely an intermittent issue. As with any ignition coils or any type of electronic coils, that when they are borderline, they're not completely cooked and they're not very, very good, they fail when they get hot. There's an expansion in the wires in there. There's a small break somewhere. So I should have used my common sense, but if you happen to have a gas-fired dryer and you're having intermittent heat loss, check out the coils. For $6 shipped, definitely worth the shot. So now I'm going to do another load of laundry, but I think we're in pretty good shape. All right, got to go, got to run. Thank you. I appreciate you watching. Let me say that first. But thanks, I do appreciate it. Got to go, got to run. See you.